I show the back of my thing right all the time.
There you go.
There it is. Double. I'm going to get one.
Stephen, I apologize. I sent you an email that was meant to go to Stephanie.
No, that's, you're not the first one that actually, it does that autofill and it says,
Yeah, I know. I didn't pay attention. I just thought I was there and I sent it and I thought.
No, I forwarded it on because I've had that actually happen to me several times. You're not the only one. It's just Outlook, right?
Yeah. Well, who's on here? Let's see, 7 o'clock. Okay, me, Stephen, 1, 2, 3, 4. Jamie's here. Mike's here. Okay. Brian may or may not be on tonight. So we're all here. So, okay, I will call to order. It's 7 o'clock. So I will call to order the City of Gahanna Council, the whole meeting for Monday, March 22nd, 2021. So we'll start with items for the Director of Finance.
Good evening.
Hi, Joanne.
How's everybody doing? Everybody get a chance to enjoy the nice weather today?
Yeah.
It's great out there.
Inside the whole night.
Yeah. I have a couple items for you tonight. The first one is a request for a resolution to transfer appropriations. This is related to getting chambers ready to come back to live meetings and providing a solution to keep everybody safe. So the technology cost came in a little bit higher than what we have available. So this is to transfer $5,000 from full-time wages in the CARES Act to technology services. And as I had mentioned in previous communication, we're really seeing a winding down of the need to have or the ability to have reimbursable payroll expenses. So this $5,000 transfer will still leave us in a good position for making the reimbursements that we can.
Okay. All right. Anybody have questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
So do we still have enough CARES Act money to cover all of this, or is this coming out of general fund?
It's all CARES Act.
Okay.
Okay, so everyone okay with this being on the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
that's
right,
fine.
so this will be on the consent agenda. Okay, next item.
Actually, the mayor's going to do a little introduction here, so I'll let her, or Stephanie here.
Yeah, I think she is.
Okay, she's going to do a brief introduction to talk about the Rapid 5 project, which is what this is in relation to.
Good evening. So the Rapid 5 project is brought on through MORPC, and the project is a great ability for the city of Gahanna to be a part of. What the Rapid 5 project will incorporate is the greenways, trails within the waterways throughout the community. And I think actually, Mayor, we have a representative from MORPC as well on the line to give a great overview of the project in more detail. So Kirsten Carr with MORPC, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Stefania and Mayor Jadwin. I'm happy to be here. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, everyone. I'm actually here with Alicia Gaston, who's the director of Uli Columbus. This is a project that's jointly done between Uli Columbus and MORPC. And so I was hoping that she could kick us off, and then I will add some more information about how this relates to Central Ohio Greenways and the region in general. And Alicia is going to try to share her screen, if that's okay.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'm trying to see here. I'm trying to get unmuted here. We'll see if this will work here. Thank you all. I'm Alicia Gaston. I'm the director of the Urban Land Institute here in Columbus. And we've been a partner of MORPC's throughout a number of initiatives. And you guys are probably very familiar with Insight 2050. I recognize Karen, who played a large role in Insight 2050. And we're kind of, our partnership is really talking about how and where we grow throughout over the last 8+ years has been a major role of our partnership together. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. Once it goes into full screen, it's a little tricky, but we're excited about our latest partnership, which is the Rapid. And I know we've been in discussions. Let's see here. Is it starting? Is the screen share working here?
This is great.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, so we'll get it into a full screen mode here. So the Rapid project is really a partnership between our two organizations and really at the forefront of growth discussions around our open spaces and our great waterway systems that we have to date. We have, I think that the real overview of the Rapid project is really to create a vision for one regional park network. And this network is to extend beyond individual jurisdictions and neighborhoods and build a framework around these waterways, which will define Central Ohio in the future. So this vision is really about connectivity. We have some really great metro parks and great parks throughout the region, but how can we connect this into one larger network? And so we're looking at 5 corridors: the Olentangy, Scioto, Alum Creek, Big Darby, and Big
Alicia,
Walnut.
your screen went black when you tried to share it full screen. I wonder if you can go back to
Let's see if
full
we
screen
can.
and see if that works again.
Yep, I can try to zoom in and make it a little bit bigger here.
Yeah,
Is that working?
that's better. Yes. Well, no, it's
Hold on, I'm trying to move it to see just to make sure you guys can see it a little bit bigger here. It's deciding to work. Okay.
It works good enough. Yeah.
Okay. So this is, our system today. We talked a little bit. I already talked about how great our system is today. We have 146 miles of blueway and riparian corridors. So that's, blueways are waterways, and around 38,000 acres of parkland and a great trail system. And you're all probably familiar with the work of COG and looking to expand the trail network in the region. And so we're starting to think, we've mentioned how growth and population is a real big, those are really big topics for both the Urban Land Institute and MORPC. And so thinking about the access that our projected growth will have to our park system as well. And as part of this, we'll get kind of deeper into the process, but we're going to take into 5 major considerations as part of this visioning process that we're going to undertake next month. So all things that are really, really important. And at ULI, we love the intersection of all of these. Our region is more sustainable with all of these pieces in our community. And this, the Rapid is not only going to directly connect these systems, but schools, neighborhoods, institutions are a large part of these corridors as well. So this is our system today. As you can see, the yellow or the orange highlights are our current trail systems. The dark green is our metro park. So hopefully you guys can see this okay. And this would be our system tomorrow. And so today only 840,000 residents are within a quarter mile of an existing park or trail. And so that's for the entire Franklin County. So if we were to have this system available, more than I think every resident is within a mile and a half of a park or greenway system that we don't have today. So a really great opportunity for our region. And so I think one of the things that's been really prominent in just the era that we're in, the case for open space is more apparent than ever. COVID has really our parks and open spaces, especially metro parks, have been the only piece of social infrastructure our region has had access to. So we're really excited about the enthusiasm around parks to date. And we're really excited about partnerships, especially with communities like Gahanna. And, I think, and Kirsten can jump in here as I'm closing, but our plan is to kick off a community engagement process here in the next week to the beginning of April. And then we'll embark on a visioning process with a couple of local design firms. Each firm will be assigned a corridor. They'll meet with the local jurisdictions along those corridors to get input and a chance to kind of share what's happening along those corridors right now. And then we'll release the final visioning book later this summer in hopes for an event that we could actually be in person at, but that's kind of unknown at this point. So I'm going to hand it back to Kirsten in case there's anything important that I've missed, and we look forward to a partnership with Gahanna.
Thank you, Alicia. And I guess I'll just to summarize it, Rapid 5 is really looking at creating the largest connected greenway system in the country. And then when you think about Central Ohio greenways, it's about creating the linear connections within that system and to that system. There's a large component about equity as part of this effort as well, making sure that we connect all our residents to this amazing resource. And obviously the Big Walnut is a big resource to Gahanna already, and extending it down south and ensuring that we have access from the different communities on the east side and west side will be really important. And then the other thing I want to mention, because Alicia said, Inside 2050 and the growth of Central Ohio, as we're thinking about redeveloping our communities, preserving that green space is going to be really important. Every time a real estate study is done, it shows how much people value those type of amenities, our waterways and our greenways. And this is a great way to kind of be proactive in preserving that in the forefront, which also will, in the long term, be an economic development driver, but most importantly, really a social asset to Central Ohio and our region, and hopefully make us stand out nationally as well.
And if I could jump in, first of all, thank you, Alicia, and thank you, Kirsten, for being here tonight. I appreciate it. And actually, Karen Angelou, thank you as well, because I know William Murdoch had reached out to me, and Karen and William and I had a fantastic conversation about this program and what it could do for Gahanna. Certainly, you saw the map, and you saw the orange lines that currently exist and the orange lines that currently do not exist. And it has been a long time goal, I believe, of our community to have that trail connectivity. I think as part of Go Forward Gahanna back in 2016, to have sidewalks and trails that create the connectivity. And as Kirsten said, it is a driver for economic development, but it's also quality of life for our residents. So this, I think, participation in this program would be a huge benefit to the community. And after we learned about this opportunity, we went back and took a look at some of the savings that we have realized with how we've handled some of our staffing. And so what Joanne is now going to present to you is how we propose to pay for our participation in this.
Great. So what we were able to do was find $10,000 in salaries and benefits. So when Zach got promoted to superintendent, we determined that we didn't need to backfill that supervisor position. We were able to make some other adjustments to get appropriate coverage. So asking for a resolution to transfer appropriations, $7,000 from full-time wages, and this is in the general fund park services, and $3,000 from the insurance account over to contract services, and that'll give us the $10,000 needed, so we can participate without actually having to increase our appropriations.
Okay. Any questions about? I guess I'm having a hard time understanding like what Gahanna will get from this. What is? I mean, our path is almost finished through Big Walnut Trail, and so for $10,000, what are we going to get for that? I mean, what's our stake in this?
I don't know, but and Alicia, if you have a thought as well. So this is truly a regional vision, and the idea is to be a regional player in this larger vision as well. We have almost a lot of the communities within Franklin County have either paid $10,000 or more towards this effort, even including the city of Reynoldsburg, who's not directly impacted by any of these trails because their trail is the Blacklick Trail, which is included in the larger vision, but not as part of the visioning project. And so it's really just creating that recognition of Gahanna being a player in this larger regional visioning process, and kind of making you stand out as a community that really cares about these kind of social and environmental amenities as well.
And yeah, I would just go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Alicia. Go ahead.
I would just echo what Kirsten has to say. And most of the times, and you guys have probably done a lot of community surveys, but parks are consistently show up as a real, something that the community members really want and they really appreciate. And I think from, as council members and mayors that you're constantly talking about economic development. And as businesses are looking for places to relocate, they're thinking about the amenities that their employees have access to. We're seeing it all along these corridors to date, the access to the rivers. So that's, something to keep in mind. And again, being part of this regional vision is a significant role as well.
Yeah, my understanding is that there are, with the 5 waterways that are in play throughout the state of Ohio, that there will be 5 architectural firms, one assigned to each waterway, and that ultimately what we receive at the end of this will be a design vision for what that trail connectivity looks like. So that will help then us as we look to grow and expand our trail system to connect. And actually, Alicia, I don't know if you can pull up from your slide deck, the 2 maps with the orange lines, kind of the as it exists now, and then the orange map as it would exist potentially for that, but to create what that trail connectivity would look like that would then be a guide for us for future capital projects as we look to invest in the connectivity for our trails.
And just to add to this too, this Rapid 5 goes further than just trails. It's really thinking about how to expand the green space around the waterways and thinking about recreational opportunities such as, fishing or mountain biking or bird watching, and really thinking about this as creating these amenities across Central Ohio. And I think a resident, just because they live in a Gahanna, they're probably really happy about what they have within Gahanna, but they also see themselves as a Central Ohio resident, just like any other resident as well. And so having this access and being connected to these other spaces is really critical for even location choice too.
Right. And thank you, Alicia, for pulling that up. If you could go to the previous map that you just had up a second ago. So I don't know, I want to keep grabbing my cursor and move it around, but if around where the Gahanna area is with the kind of spotted sections, there you go. So that is as it currently exists with our trail system. And then if you go to the next map as to what it would show.
Bear with me a sec.
Yeah, you're doing a great job. That's why I asked you to do it, and I didn't want to do it.
It really increases your access, and not just through, up to Blendon Woods, but it's and that's what the important layer that we're so excited about, how much this complements the work of the Central Ohio Greenways Trail Board, and the east-west connections are so critical. Obviously the waterways are kind of those north-south connections, but those trail connections are critical to this discussion as well.
Yeah. So you can see not only the trail that would connect all the way down through Whitehall, which certainly we're working on the Big Walnut Section 8 trail this year, the design of that to connect to Pizarro Park, but then the section that goes out to the west, this around 670, and what that might look like for us and what opportunities we have there to help guide, future development, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, in terms of what that trail connectivity looks like.
Okay. All right. Okay, any other questions?
Hey, Nancy, this is Mike.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry, Mike. I did see your hand.
No problem. So, well, thanks to everyone. Thanks to our guests for the brief presentation. In the report, specifically the report to council under action item 2, there's some reference to waterways, reference to Big Walnut Creek. And then in the ULI/MORPC presentation, there was some reference to, I think the phrase you used was blueways. Personally, as a pretty avid angler for many years, anytime we discuss the creek, we're talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and definitely a quality of life benefit for me personally. I know in years past, there's been some discussion within our own Parks Department about kayak and canoe put in and takeout locations. So in regards to Councilwoman McGregor's question about what does Gahanna get out of this, I don't know, does the administration have any comment about kind of the intersection between our own maybe future in-house plans vis-a-vis this larger regional initiative?
Well, and honestly, that was one of the things I liked about this project was the opportunity to identify, well, not to be redundant, but the opportunity to identify those opportunities for us, where would be the best placements in terms of launching sites that would then help us to connect to other aspects of the waterway. Where's the best locations for that? I kind of view this project as a starting point to help us identify that. That is a need. I should say a need. It's a want that we've heard from the community, and waterways are certainly, I know from a tourism perspective, one of the latest and greatest things that help drive people and drive the economy too. And we have a tremendous attribute right through the downtown area that I think we've always recognized we could take better advantage of what we have there in terms of improving the access to that.
Okay.
And if I can I just add real quick, Michael, that I'm so glad you brought up waterways because I keep forgetting Central Ohio Greenways, Blueways. I did put the link in the chat. We actually had someone paddle all of our river corridors a few years ago and identify exit and entry points. And so you can, as a private resident right now, could actually use that interactive map to figure out where you would want to let your kayak or canoe in and where you could get out. And so there are certainly opportunities for the city of Gahanna to figure out how to play in that field as well, and potentially even open up offering kayaks for the residents, which is something that Bexley is already doing.
Perfect. Thank you. And Madam Chair, just one more question, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Does perhaps a byproduct of this study or plan, would it maybe open us up to the opportunity to take advantage of some sort of conservation, I don't know if grants is the right word, but conservation kind of designation, just something in general that would equip the city with the tools necessary to, I guess, kind of protect the creek in essence, or the Blue Way, I guess, to use the buzzword here. Again, I personally think it's a great asset. It's an underutilized asset, and I'm just wondering if maybe perhaps more resources were devoted to the creek itself. If perhaps we can leverage it a little bit more for tourism, economic development, and just quality of life as well. So I didn't know if maybe, again, a byproduct of this would be the opportunity to capture some state level resources, federal resources, or maybe even just local resources in general, specifically with regard to conservation and I guess improving the corridor.
And I could jump in here for a second too. I think that's an excellent point, and the Nature Conservancy is already very aware of what is happening with this. They can be advocates both locally and nationally for efforts like this. And so I don't know if I can't speak for them if they have current grants that are available, but they could always be a partner to help access different types of grants, especially land conservation grants.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
Yep.
Marissa, do you have a question?
Yeah, just so thank you again also to our guests and the presentation tonight. And I think this sounds like a really wonderful opportunity. Just to follow up on some points, thinking more about the trails, since Mr. Schnetzer questioned more about the creeks themselves. From what I heard, it sounds like there's kind of an aesthetic or wayfinding perhaps component to this. Am I understanding that correctly, that there would be some consistency in wayfinding or the way people utilize the trails?
The wayfinding component is not specific to that initial visioning process, but it is something that is being discussed as part of Central Ohio Greenways, which is a complementary part of the larger visioning process. We have subcommittees of Central Ohio Greenways that specifically are looking at wayfinding and making signage more coherent and cohesive, in Central Ohio, to make it easier for Central Ohioans to find their way around. We know that there are some issues currently on some of the trails to make it more difficult, and maybe also create some fears. And, well, if I go this way, where am I going to end up? And creating that signage is going to be really critical. But it's not specifically part of the visioning process, but it is in the works as part of Central Ohio Greenways.
All right, Stephen, do you have a question?
I do. Thank you. So I want to thank the mayor, Stefania, Kirsten, Alicia. Thank you so much. This is a very wonderful an opportunity. And I'm excited as an avid biker and going around our trails as much. Gahanna the trails are getting a little too small for me, and so I'm having to expand my horizons. I go up and down the Alum Creek Trail quite a bit. So I look forward to someday having something like this. Two questions. One is Councilman Schnetzer was actually touching on it a little bit. To fund our current trails, we've actually used grants from the state of Ohio, or a portion of the grants, to go to our trails. Does something like this, trying to find the word, accentuate or highlight the fact, or get us access to more grants or opportunities that might be out there for funding the connectivity or the branching out parts in order to get to our creeks?
I can speak to that. Thank you for the question. I do think that, even with the Central Ohio Greenways, when you're part of that larger network and the understanding that there's an overall vision, not just of course, the city of Gahanna is able to gain the momentum with the trail community, but then you're also bringing visitors from other communities into Gahanna using the Greenway trails. So when you're going after those grants and you have the opportunity to say that this is a beneficial asset and investment for the community as a whole, to incorporate health and wellness, the conservation component as well that was discussed, all of that would absolutely be beneficial when we're going after additional funding or alternative funding to gain the ability to build these things.
So bottom line, we might get some more points that's going to be favorable in order to get the grants, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, fantastic. The second question is so when can our citizens, when can we actually see something? Maybe you mentioned that, Stephanie, and I'm sorry.
I did not. I know and I'll actually have Kirsten answer that specifically, but the process will start here very soon within the beginning of April. But as far as an actual deliverable, I'll let Kirsten speak to that.
Yeah, and Alicia can jump in as well, but right now we're looking at a very, very aggressive timeline. The Neighborhood Design Center is going to do some social outreach to get input and feedback from the community. That feedback is going to be shared with the 5 design firms that will likely start the middle of April, and then have like a month or so to put some really cool graphics and visuals together. And then a month later, sometime this summer, we'll have a public rollout and some kind of event around it. So it's going to move very, very fast.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yes, and it will. And, the one thing that we can share with all of the design firms have been assigned their corridors. And so the Edge Group, if you guys are familiar with them, I actually used to be at their firm. So great landscape architecture firm, and is actually very familiar with Big Walnut. So they'll be outreaching to the city as well as part of the process. And we need your guys' help when it comes to the community engagement. We need to hear what the folks at the city of Gahanna want as part of this process, as part of a park system. So we need that feedback. And as soon as we know when we can release it to the public, we will, because it really depends on timing. And our team really wants this to be a public rollout and wants to do it in a way that, we're in a new era with COVID, and we're in a new era with doing community outreach. And so we need all the help that we can get during this kind of quick time frame.
And just so you know, there's a website, and throughout all this outreach, the city of Gahanna's logo would be all over it. There would be recognition of Gahanna being an active partner in this process as well.
And the final vision document, the book that will be dispersed as well.
Good.
Okay, Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just more of an administrative point. Could the presentation that we're seeing here be made, as part of the minutes?
It was attached to the agenda, and I also just forwarded it to the clerk as well. I didn't realize it was part of the agenda, but it was affixed and included, I think, along with the Parks Director's report.
Okay, then maybe I'm on the wrong spot on the agenda. I'm still, I guess, on finance, but okay, if it's already there, no big deal. Appreciate it.
It was not already there, but it has been uploaded now.
Oh, you're just too quick, April. Thank you.
Perfect. That explains it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, thank you for the presentation, ladies. We appreciate that. So back to the resolution. Anybody have a problem with the resolution? Any other questions? We'll just, if not, we'll just put on, we're okay with consent agenda?
Consent is great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll have this on the consent agenda. Thank you very much for your presentations tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, next, Ordinance 0018-2021.
Yes, so this is a request for a supplemental appropriation and authorization to transfer some funds. This stems from a 5-year U.S. Treasury audit over our Treasury equitable sharing. There were a couple things that came out from the audit. One was that we didn't historically separate the funds since they're their restricted use is pretty much identical for public safety purposes. So in 2015, we did separate the two programs as required. We did not look back, though, since those years had already been reported. We didn't feel it was necessary. And then it's also very difficult with some of the information that the police department receives when these deposits come in to determine what's Treasury money and what's Department of Justice money. So they did see where we did put some Treasury money in the Department of Justice, and there was some local funding. So basically, their results are kind of getting us straightened out and getting everything in the right buckets. So with that, asking for a supplemental appropriation and the Federal Law Enforcement Trust Fund, which is the Department of Justice Equitable Sharing Program, of $95,608.47. And then also a transfer out of the Treasury Equitable Sharing Fund in the amount of $2,393. From the Department of Justice, $88,064 will go into the Treasury Fund. And then a combination between what's the transfer out for the Treasury and the remaining transfer out for the Department of Justice will just go to the Public Safety Fund. Those were local dollars. They're still related to public safety, should be used for public safety. They just can't be in with the two equitable sharing programs. And we have taken action to make sure that these things don't happen again with the next audit. The police department, when working with both departments, was able to find some resources. So when these funds do come in, it's easier to identify which program they actually belong to. This supplemental transfer will get our books realigned with what's been reported. And then as adjustments come through from Department of Justice for the reporting, the police department will make sure that they make finance aware, so that way we can make those adjustments within our accounting system too.
Okay. Anyone have questions? No questions. Okay, for first reading, no need to come back. Consent agenda?
Consent is good.
Pardon?
Good.
Okay. All right, so this will be on for first reading next Monday. No need to come back to committee, and then consent agenda the following meeting. Thanks, Joanne.
Madam Chair, it's a fifth Monday.
Oh yeah, that's right. So it'd be, I forgot about that. 2 Mondays from now. You're right. Okay, next item from the Director of Parks and Rec.
Hello again. I have one item for you this evening. This is in relation to the splash pad at the Gahanna swimming pool. You may have remembered we did have a request to go to bid for the installation. That is still in play. What this item is for the design elements. So the department reviewed multiple iterations of a design for the splash pad. The rendering of what was chosen is part of the packet for you this evening, if you would like to view that. So this evening we are respectfully requesting legislation authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Vortex not to exceed $225,000 for the play elements and mechanicals for the splash pad at the Gahanna swimming pool.
Is this for construction or just for design?
This is the actual elements of play. So they are part of the cooperative purchase agreement through Sourcewell. So this is the actual elements that will be installed. So the installation will be coming at a later date. Okay.
I looked at the map and it looks really cool, but what is like the lazy river thing? What is that? Is that a...
So that's actually a ground feature. So that is an element that we obviously saw beneficial to the Gahanna swimming pool specifically. So it's called a water journey, and that is active to small children, infants, toddlers, because they're actually invited to actually sit and play. They can create dams in the water. So it's just a really interactive play for those little, the little ones. It's something that we needed to include in the Gahanna swimming pool area.
Okay, it seemed like that, but I wasn't sure. It was hard to tell from the drawing. Okay, other questions, Michael?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. This looks really cool. Thank you for the visual here, the exhibit. Just a kind of generic question. What's the footprint approximately of this entire thing, including that water journey as well as the more traditional splash elements? You got a ballpark idea of how large this thing is?
Sure. So the whole piece is about 5,000 square feet.
Okay. Yeah. All right. It's big. Cool. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Marissa.
Yeah, thank you. I think this looks great, and that's great to hear that about the size. General question: is there going to be like a posted age limit for this, or a recommendation that it's for children ages up to a certain age? And I have a second question after that as well.
So there is not an age limit specific to this piece. We do hope that it is multi-generational. We, of course, during the pool season, we'll make sure that it's monitored effectively. Outside of the pool season, the operation will be open to the public. If we identify that there's some challenges with aggressive play, then we'll take appropriate measures and adding staffing if necessary.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the multi-generational aspect to that. The second question I had, I received a question from a constituent just asking about the overall plan for Big Walnut. Could I just give you an opportunity to speak to that a little bit as well, so we are all kind of on the same page?
So the Big Walnut Trail, Section 8?
Yes.
Beautiful. So yes, we are in motion right now to review the alignment over the 270 bridge on South Hamilton Road. So we have engaged with an engineering firm to review the alignment of what is the safest and the available to get over the on-ramp into Pizzura Park. So this year we are actively working through the alignment and the design features of Trail Section 8.
Okay. Any other questions? Jamie, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've seen several different master plans for the ball diamonds and the parks and everything else. Obviously, this is kind of tucked in with the pools and everything else, but is it consistent with the plans that we have had done to date?
Absolutely. So obviously, with the Southwest floodplain, there are multiple iterations of what that park will become. The pools will remain part of that overall footprint of the Southwest floodplain. So with the pools still remaining, we knew we needed some additional amenities. With the improvements of those pools, the splash pad will remain intact and will only increase an amenity within the footprint of the pools. So it does fit within the overall vision of that space.
Okay. Any other questions? When you talk about the Big Walnut Trail number, Section 8, was there at one time a talk of going under 270?
There's been a lot. There's over, under, through. There are a lot of different alignments that have been discussed. So that's what right now is to truly identify with ODOT, of course, what is the safest and, again, the most available route to get over. So yes, all of the above have been discussed as an option to make that trail happen.
I will say that I know that parts of the Alum Creek Trail go under under roadways, and my brother he bikes probably 50, 100 miles a week on the trails. But one thing not complains about, but the concern is that when the waterway floods, it leaves silt on the trail, and if it's not cleaned off, it makes it really slippery. So I'm sure that's a consideration for the under. I mean, even though that's safer in some ways, then that's another issue with taking it under the trail, under the roadway. So
right. There's multiple considerations in response to that. So absolutely.
Okay, Jamie.
Hey, Nancy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know in the past there's been funding challenges also if you try and take a path through flood zones and floodways, that kind of stuff. So going under highways almost always takes you into those areas and makes funding
Sure.
hard. So bridges are expensive, but tunnels you pay for them yourselves. So, and trying to get something under, I mean, if adjacent to an existing bridge and structure, that's one thing. You're not going to build a new tunnel underneath 270. I tried to put a gas line under 270 once, and it took an act of God. So they're not going to let you dig a hole underneath 270. But if you go adjacent to a bridge, you're already in the floodway, and you're paying for it yourself. So,
Gotcha.
Anyway.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? I thought it looked really cool. I was really excited to see all the play elements. That looks neat.
Good.
So, all right. So let's see. Does this have to? It doesn't have to have. Okay. So, everyone okay with this? No need to come. First reading. No need to come back, and then consent agenda.
It sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next direct items from the Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, everyone. Long time no see. Hope you're all doing well. I have the first part. I know I've talked about it before, but the city's undergoing an update to our compensation plan, which is contained in the salary ordinance. The first part of that was doing job audits for selected positions throughout the city, and those have been completed by our consultant. So this request is to amend the salary ordinance that was approved last year with the budget to include 3 new titles so that employees in those titles can be reclassified based on the current duties that they are doing. So out of all the job audits that we did, these were the 3 that needed 3 new positions that needed added so employees could be reclassified. So it's not a new hire, it's an employee who's doing work at a higher level than their current position is in the pay grade for. So the modifications to Table 2 include additions of the court liaison and / victim advocate coordinator at pay grade C12, a compliance and program administrator at pay grade C15, and a planning and zoning coordinator at pay grade C13. So this is the first part. The second part of the compensation study will review the wage scales of all of the different pay grades, and that salary study is being conducted by our consultants now, and will be brought forward with the 2022 salary ordinance and the budget later in the year. Do you have any questions at this time?
What department does the compliance and program administrator? I thought I read that, but I don't see that now. Where are they?
The Department of Public Service and Engineering.
Okay. And so if these are 3 new positions, are we taking 3 positions or 3 titles out of the pay ordinance?
No, I left them in because there's other individuals in those pay grades. So for instance, like the city has many administrative assistants, management analysts. So there are people, or there could be employees in the other titles that these employees currently hold.
Okay. For all 3 of them, there are?
For 2 of them, there are.
Okay. So for the 1, are you taking it out?
No, we leave it in at this point until it's analyzed if we need that position later, like in another budget year. This would just be to reclassify the current employees that need reclassified.
Okay. Any other questions?
No.
Okay, so let me go back. All right. So are we okay with a first reading in the first meeting in April?
Want a waiver? I think they want a waiver.
Oh, they want a waiver.
Yeah. Am I right? Am I correct?
I don't see.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is that on there? It doesn't say it waiver to me.
It's on the
Report.
report that I submitted, and that's due to that way we can get these employees reclassified and paid properly.
It's not on the agenda as that. That's why I didn't see it.
Oh, it's on our legislate. So.
Okay.
It's probably, I was out last week and the deputy finished some of this stuff, so it's very possible it just got missed between she and I. So I will make that correction to make sure it states that by the time the adoption rules do.
Okay, thanks. I was thinking, I keep looking at this, I don't see anything. All right, so so then this will be on, is waiver and emergency or just waiver?
Just
Of
waiver.
second. Okay, so is everyone okay with this? Should this be on consent agenda then, or a regular agenda? We have.
I'm okay with consent.
Okay.
Typically, waivers and things go to regular, but
Do you want it on regular, Jamie?
yeah, and in the past, anytime we've had a waiver or emergency, those kind of things we've typically done them, but I don't have an issue with this one. But
Well, we can do it. We can have it on for regular agenda. Ordinance 0016 for regular agenda. Okay. Looks like that's it. Next. Thanks, Miranda.
Thank you.
Next, items from the Director of Public Service and Engineering.
Good evening, everyone. The first item I have for you this evening is a levy assessment for 3737 Hines Road. A statutory resolution was passed determining the necessity and intent for the assessment of sanitary sewer fees for 3737 Hines Road. If you remember, this is a property with a failing septic system that has been ordered to tie into sewer due to the failing septic system. The last remaining piece of legislation in the administrative process is the issuance of the ordinance authorizing the city to levy the assessment. Once the final piece of legislation is adopted, the clerk of council office will publish the resulting ordinance for 1 week. A notification letter will be sent to the property owner, and the assessment will be filed with Franklin County. So we're requesting an ordinance authorizing the city to proceed with this assessment.
Okay, any questions about that? Okay, everyone okay with first meeting in March or April, and then no need to come back, and then consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Everyone else okay? All right, so okay, so we'll do that. Next item.
Next item is the request to award the contract for the 2021 street program, as well as a supplemental for permissive tax funds that we received. On March 5th, bids for the 2021 street program were open and reviewed. We did receive 4 bids this year. This year's program will consist of asphalt resurfacing, crack sealing, street rebuilds, and striping. Strasser Paving was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder for 2021. We do recommend awarding the base bid as well as alternate 1, and we are requesting a 10% contingency to cover any unforeseen construction costs. As most of you or all of you are aware, Franklin County Engineers Office collects and distributes Gahanna's permissive tax funds. The work being completed on Taylor Station Road and Morrison Road on the program is eligible for permissive tax funding. We did request $200,000 of permissive tax funds, which the county commissioners approved on March 9th. So we are requesting a supplemental appropriation to transfer those funds to the appropriate expense account. So we are respectfully requesting an ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into contract with Strasser Paving for the 2021 street program.
Any questions? Okay.
Nancy, I didn't see the engineer's estimate on that one. Are we within estimate?
Yes, we are 2% under.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so this will be for first reading next in April, for April 1st meeting, April 5th, I think. And then no need to come back, and then consent agenda. Is everyone all right with that? Any questions about that?
I think that.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I just thought that since it's for funding, we would put it on regular. I think Mr. Lyric had been requesting that, as opposed to consent, but no issue with the other course.
Okay, it can be on regular agenda. So, all right. So it'll be regular agenda for the following meeting. All right. Okay, next item.
The last item I have for you this evening is a request to enter into contract for the design of Cherry Bottom Road stabilization measures. So the roadway shoulder at 2 locations along Cherry Bottom is being affected by some unstable soil and is causing the banks to erode. The condition does continue to worsen, which will impact the roadway if it's not addressed immediately. Based on Gahanna's pre-qualification process, we sought scope proposals for design and stabilization measures in order to preserve the public's health, safety, and welfare. SNME was selected from the pool of respondents as the most qualified, and then we negotiated a service contract with them. Included as part of this proposal is a jurisdictional waters delineation for Academy Park, which provide needed information in determining available locations for a possible biking skills course that the Department of Parks and Recreation is exploring. We are respectfully requesting an ordinance to authorize the mayor into contract with SNME for the professional services related to the stabilization of Cherry Bottom. Given the potential for worsening conditions to impact the roadway, we are requesting a waiver and emergency of this legislation.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this one?
How does the bike park work into the slope stabilization?
One of the areas where the slope is impacted is right next to Academy Park. The consultant is already reviewing this area as part of the stabilization measures, so it's just an additional step while they're already working on it.
And that's just to delineate the wetlands there?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. So this will be first reading April 5th. No need to come back to committee. And then second, this can be on consent.
That's waiver, isn't it?
Oh, it's waiver and emergency. Yes, it is. No, well, it says emergency. Mine doesn't say waiver. Does yours say waiver?
I'm looking it up again.
Grant, are you asking for waiver also?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Okay.
It is.
All right.
Waiver and emergency.
So then that should probably be on regular agenda. So this will be on the regular agenda on April the 5th. Okay. Sorry, I heard him say that. I didn't. Okay. All right. Thank you. Next, item from the Department of Economic Development.
Yes, I will start this off. So just to refresh council's recollection, back on February 15th, council voted to approve the rezoning request for the Crescent at Central Park for the residential component of that project. That evening, I committed to you. You all had asked how soon we would be bringing a development agreement forward, and I committed to the fact that our team would bring you a draft of the agreement within 30 days. This is the first committee of the whole meeting within that period of time. We've done our best to meet that deadline. We're also trying to keep in mind that given this time of year, the developer really needs to move forward at an expeditious rate due to the construction window that exists. It is not likely that there would be any vertical construction on this project yet this year. However, there's a lot of prep work that needs to be done on this project, cutting trees, clearing the land, moving dirt, getting ready to lay the utilities, roadways, etc. So with that, we wanted to make sure that we came to you as soon as possible to present you at least with a draft of the agreement. We have already had, I think, a relatively in-depth discussions around the incentives that are associated with this project back over the months that we were dealing with the rezoning issue. And we could have come together or come to you tonight to actually present the legislation along with the draft of the agreement. However, what we wanted to do was to walk you through a draft of the agreement, give you an opportunity to ask any further questions you might have, solicit any feedback that you would have, so that at the next committee of the whole meeting, we can come to you with a finalized agreement and then the proposed legislation that would be necessary to move forward, so we don't continue to go hopefully back and forth, given the lengthy discussions we've already had. So with that, I want to turn this over to Jennifer Six, who's been leading the negotiations with the developers team, and she can walk you through a draft of this agreement.
Excellent. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council members. To refresh your memory, as Mayor said, we've been working on this agreement in depth for the past 3 weeks and have the following in an email that I sent to you prior to City Council tonight. I know you probably didn't have a chance to take a deep dive into it, which is why I submitted the attached memo that really outlines some of the highlights of the agreement. Also tonight, you'll hear from Larry Canini and Aaron Underhill as it relates to a small PowerPoint presentation that they'll be offering. And then we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. Obviously, time is of the essence for this. And like Mayor said, while we could have brought an ordinance along with this, we felt that in the true fashion of bringing a draft agreement to you, that this would allow you the opportunity to ask questions tonight, take the agreement home with you, review it, and then follow up with us if you have any questions, any concerns. And then if we could have those prior to the next committee of the whole meeting, where we can expeditiously move this agreement forward. The fine points of this agreement are, as far as from an incentive standpoint, are a community reinvestment area agreement that per the current school compensation agreement, the development is entitled to a 10-year 80% tax abatement on the real property improvements. In addition to that, there's a TIF district and a TIF that will be placed on the property. Keep in mind, this is a non-school TIF, meaning the school district will be made whole throughout the entire proposed 30-year term. Keeping the school district whole does not mean that the city has to come out of pocket for anything. So I want you to keep that in mind as we move forward with it. The TIF basically just goes back in to fund some of the public infrastructure improvements that the developer will be paying for upfront. The next is a new community authority. And Mr. Underhill will be able to go into a more in-depth, deep dive conversation on new community authorities. But basically, the developer is agreeing to place the property in a new community authority that will generate additional tax revenue to the school district and to the city. This is nothing that actually benefits the developer, but they are coming forward to us to offer this to us to allow us as the city and the school district to create additional means of revenue. Parkland, that has been an issue that's been addressed here. The Buckles family has agreed to donate property to the city, and we added a caveat in here within 30 days of approval of the TIF to make sure that it happens. Now, we told you it would happen, but this actually seals the deal to make sure that it will happen. And then the limitation on future residential. The developer has agreed in writing to reserve 4 acres of property for the development solely of corporate, professional, or medical use. And the developer is here this evening. And if you have any questions, we can stop there and answer them, or we can follow through with the remainder of the presentation, and we can turn it over to Mr. Underhill. And April, I believe you're able to share your screen with that presentation. Ms. Bowers.
Yes, thank you. Okay, just so I am absolutely crystal clear on this. I understand that you said that the city would not come out of pocket for TIF reimbursement to the district. Going back to the CRA though, can you help me understand where we are on that as far as an obligation to the district?
Yes, absolutely. In the event, so on the real property side, it's an automatic 80% for 10 years because the school signed off on it and the city signed off on that well before any of us even got here. The caveat on the income tax sharing is if the income tax is over a certain threshold, the city agrees to share a portion of its income tax that it is receiving from the project and is essentially making a payment to the school. So we're not coming out of pocket and having to appropriate new money, But as we collect income tax from the project, as it generates income tax, we will share a portion of that with the school district.
Okay. All right. Any other questions at this point? Okay, so where are we? What are we waiting on?
Well, next we could turn this over to Mr. Underhill. And if April wants to share her screen with the power of the PDF that Aaron provided earlier in the day, we can turn it over to Mr. Underhill.
Okay, thank you very much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to come back before you with this development agreement proposal, which is consistent in all relevant respects with what we've talked about previously when we were going through the zoning process. And I thought it was worthwhile to talk about what the development would be providing to the city, walk through what we need from the city, which in the grand scheme of things is relatively minor, and then walk you through each element of this agreement in terms of what it means for the city and its finances. So yeah, here we go. I can see, can everybody see that? April's sharing that screen. Thank you, April. So as you know, we've got the 14.4 acres of multifamily. We also have 26.5 plus acres of commercial property, and we're talking about everything that's west of kind of the existing development over by Central Ohio Urology, but we're talking about the property that's largely undeveloped today, and or is completely undeveloped today. We also have the future park to the south of Tech Center Drive, which is 34 acres. I think a later slide still calls it 36. I've got a mental block on this for some reason. But as Jennifer mentioned, as we committed to during the rezoning process, we will commit to the following in this agreement: a deed restriction in favor of the city, which commits at least 4 of the acres in what's designated here as the commercial property to be developed with nothing or held off the market for development for nothing other than professional, medical, administrative offices for a period of 7 years. So as you'll remember, there are all sorts of uses that are allowed on the balance of the property outside of the multifamily, and those include retail, some hotel rights, and other things that, but we have made a commitment to at least 4 acres. We believe, you know, obviously that there is going to be more office to the east and possibly even more office here, but that restriction is another promise that we can give you outside of the zoning, that will be, there will be a concerted effort to get that office there. Another point of concern was that this multifamily project would be the gateway to asking for more later on. And so we've made, as the property owner here has made a very serious commitment to the city, another deed restriction in the same instrument, which is in the form of which is attached to this development agreement as an exhibit. But in this deed restriction, we will commit for a period of 40 years not to come back for any multifamily uses as a request on the commercial property as shown on this map. The developer, and when I say the developer, that'll be a combination of the Buckles family, Casto, and or future users, will be fronting the cost of the public streets. A little difficult to see here, but the north-south public street and all the infrastructure that would typically go along with that, such as utilities, that runs from Tech Center Drive and runs along the western edge of the multifamily, the eastern edge of the commercial property. So about $3.4 million there. And then we'll get into this new community authority charge, which we are not asking for any money out of this NCA, but thought it would be a helpful tool for the city to realize a little bit more out of this development than they usually would. Next slide, please. So really, we're only asking for two things here as the developer, one of which is already in place, which is the benefit of the 10-year 80% tax abatement. As Jennifer mentioned, that's been in place for over 20 years now, 25 years maybe. And what we're really looking for out of this is a contribution out of the TIF money of $1.4 million out of the $3.4 million that's going to cost to construct the street and the related public infrastructure improvements, plus interest from that TIF at the rate of 4% per year, and that's to cover the costs of financing that $1.4 million. Here again, we're not asking for the entirety of this, but it's helping us to really the entirety of the $3.4 million, but that investment is going to open up this entire property to be immediately developed with other commercial type uses. And so we're asking for essentially 41% of the cost to be reimbursed to us only from the TIF monies that are available. And the great thing about multifamily is typically when it gets started in terms of being built and developed, it gets finished. It's different from doing a TIF, for instance, on a single family residential project where you're a little bit at the will of the market in terms of when you'll see a return into the TIF fund. So, once Casto begins this project, a couple years later, that TIF will start collecting money. Next slide. Thank you. So what's in it for Gahanna? And I'm going to go into all of these individually momentarily, but, all of these projections mean you have to make assumptions about what will happen, but we've done research on what types of jobs can be generated from the mix of uses we're proposing here. We know that you have a hotel bed tax, and we're hoping for about 240 rooms in 2 hotels over the next 5 years or so. We have in the non-school TIF, with Casto having done so many of these projects over the years, we can pinpoint pretty well an estimated TIF generation figure here, and that's the first number you see on the right of your screen, $19 million over 30 years. A lot of that will be probably after the abatement runs off, because it goes without saying that when you have 100% of the non-school taxes that you can capture rather than just the 20% that's there during the abatement period, there will be a lot more money there. But this yields a total based on our projections of $55.6 million roughly over 30 years. And you'll see in my note here that even if I'm off by 50%, $27 million isn't bad. That's nearly $1 million a year, but don't think we are. Here again, I said 36 acres of parkland. It's supposed to be 34, but at no charge to the city. And we are making a commitment as to when that is now going to happen, which will be after we've gotten approval of the TIF and the certificate of appropriateness for the first project on the site. Next slide, please. Hopefully you can see this. I thought this was worthwhile to put together in terms of showing you a timeline of the real estate property taxes and what's going to happen over the 30-year period. So if you see the bottom here, the green, which says base value, base AV, is the taxes to be distributed to all the taxing districts in the project area. And what that basically means is the underlying property value that is there is kicking off taxes to all different places today, the city included, although they're a small portion of the real estate tax bill, but social service agencies, the schools, everybody continues to collect the level of taxes they are getting today. And quite possibly with some transfers of ground, that property value may go up based on actual transactions, and those taxes continue to be going to the places where they otherwise would have, absent an abatement or a TIF. Now, if you see on the left-hand side of the screen, the increase in the assessed value is shown in the sort of hashed area there with the lines through it, and that is intended to indicate where we've increased value by building buildings and other things on the property. And so during that first 10-year period, that abatement, you can see that in that area, it doesn't have the lines through it. 80% of that money is going to be abated, which is going to attract jobs and development to this project. And that little hashed area above the abatement box there demonstrates the other 20% that will either be going to the TIF or to the schools because we're keeping them whole. Once we get into years 11 through 30, which is everything between that abated box and what says new post-project AV or assessed value on the right, that is available to be captured into the TIF. And our projection is that basically roughly about the time we get through the abatement period, that we will have been reimbursed for our $1.4 million. And by year 11 or 12 of that TIF, all of that money will be going into a fund that the city will be able to use for whatever purpose it wants that's permitted under the ordinance and state law. So roadway improvements, parkland improvements, all sorts of things that are cast under a wide net under the statute. So that's really where this will kick off money from a real property tax standpoint, where it'll be after that abatement wears off. And then, of course, after the 30-year period, it all goes to where it would otherwise be going to in terms of the city and other agencies. Next slide, please. As far as income taxes are concerned, we have estimated that we would generate 3.5 jobs per 1,000 square feet of office space. And this number here includes not only the office space we anticipate on the property that I showed you in that first slide, but also includes additional development on the property to the east that's near Buckles Court. And we estimate 170 additional jobs from retail and hotel jobs. And while those obviously have much lower annual pay rates than office does, it still yields a decent amount of money over time. And I think we've said $35,000 per job for each of those uses, and you would get that 2.5% income tax from those jobs during the term of this development agreement, except for the fact you do have the sharing with the school district. And so we say here that there's about a $1.38 million per year of annual income taxes that build out, and that does not take inflation into account. Next slide, please. The hotel bed taxes, as we start to return to some normalcy here, we were seeing very high demand in the area, and especially in locations like this with visibilities from the interstate. We feel bullish on the fact that we'll be able to attract a couple of hotels here. I would sort of compare these to if you've been over into the New Albany area off of US Route 62. There are, I think, at least 3 hotels over there now that weren't there 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they typically are attractive to the business traveler. And, they're the Hampton Inns of the world, those sorts of hotels. And we think we could, there's a market here for 2 120-bed hotels at a 6% bed tax rate. You as the city get 1/6 of that. We've done a projection that would say a $125 per night average with a 75% average occupancy, which is about what is required in order for a hotel to be profitable. It would yield on its own $4.1 million over 30 years to the city, and that's not being shared with anybody. Next slide. Okay, the new community authority charge. I know there's been a lot of questions about this along the way, and I just wanted to kind of talk about what this charge does and what it really is. So the new community authority charge, we're proposing a $5 million charge. I have suggested that maybe this is something that could be shared with the school district, and it's sort of found money, if you will, and maybe in your negotiations with them, this is something that could be put towards, for instance, a facilities fund. Maybe split it with them, but obviously if you'd like to keep it all and use it for other purposes, you can do that as well. But an NCA charge is really a voluntary additional property tax charge, And in order to do one of these in Ohio, the property owner has to agree to record a declaration against its property that requires it to pay this on an annual basis. And it's actually a separate line on the property tax bill, but no one really notices that when they see their bill, and they just pay it along with their taxes. The great thing about it is it can be collected along, if there's a real property tax foreclosure action or a tax lien is foreclosed upon, the NCA revenues will come along with it. So you really know that you're going to be able to get this money on a yearly basis. A new community authority board of trustees would be created, and that would have at least a majority of its members, if not most of them, appointed by the city, and it would administer the charge and then work with the city on how to spend that money as it becomes available. So here again, we are not requesting any use of this money, and so our suggestion in using this was providing another tool in the toolbox for the city, in addition to income taxes and hotel bed taxes and TIF money, to provide a real revenue generator for the city. Over 30 years is about $2.5 million we project after we build out. If you think about how you build a road or any other sort of infrastructure, this is another tool to help fund that sort of thing. But if it's rare that a city or anybody for that matter would have the money sitting around to go out and make a big public infrastructure improvement just out of cash. So what you see from these new community authorities is often they provide a source of debt service payments. And so I would look at this as being able to leverage this available revenue stream, which is a part of the tax bill and therefore is fairly certain, in order to go out and get funding as you need it for various projects that would serve the area. Last slide, please. So in summary, $55 million or so of new revenue over 30 years from 4 revenue sources. Clearly, there will be hundreds of new jobs. We'll have the new parkland, and we're making a commitment as to when you're going to get that. We'll have the deed restrictions, and all of this in return for no pledging of the city's general fund, no new investment from the city other than sharing some TIF revenue, and the availability of an NCA charge, and which I think could be a tool that the city could implement in other places as well, and has been used in other cities and in areas of Franklin County. And I'm sure your council can provide you with many examples of that, but certainly another thing that could be considered that could be a real value generator, not only from this project, but from maybe other projects in the city in the future as well. So all in all, that's the brief overview. We do have a timing concern in terms of, if you think about how infrastructure is built in Ohio, where now that we're at the beginning of the spring, it sounds funny to be worried about next winter, but asphalt plants close over the winter. It's hard to dig for utilities, et cetera, in the winter. And so what I try to do, and my clients try to do, are look forward to the date when we really need to absolutely have a shovel in the ground, and that will be coming this fall. In order to get there, we need to get this agreement moved along, some separate TIF legislation moved along, and we'll have to go through a permitting process, of course. So all of that takes a lot of time, and that's why we thought it was best to come to you sort of informally this evening, introduce the agreement, but with the hopes of, at the next committee meeting, getting your support and possibly being able to waive some readings when we get to the full city council. But purpose of this evening is to get a Q&A going here as well. And I know you have your counsel here. They can answer some questions, but I appreciate the time to make the introduction of the agreement.
Thank you very much. Might have an echo. I don't know why. Let me turn it off. Okay. Any questions? No questions.
Madam Chair, this is Mike.
Sure.
More, I guess, just to try and connect this discussion with past discussions. I'm wondering if there might be some benefit to clarify and summarize maybe the first couple of pages. And so I guess I'll jump in with that. And if the applicants would care to correct me if any of this is wrong. So that first exhibit on page 1 that shows the map, the parcel, or the area I should say, that we're discussing is kind of bounded in black there. It's north of Tech Center. It is south of the highway. It is west of, I guess, the drainage basin there, and then it is east of Hamilton Road and the on-ramp. All in, that's approximately 41 acres, I believe.
Correct.
We rezoned approximately 14.4 acres for multifamily, leaving 26.6 left for commercial development. I know in past presentations there's been some discussion about what will go in there. I believe there was talk of a couple hotels and a couple office buildings. I'm just wondering if maybe the applicant would confirm that is the intended use of that existing, or I should say remaining space.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Snetzer. We have, yes, our vision here is 2 hotels, 120 beds each. We don't believe those would come out of the ground at the same time, but maybe 2 or 3 years apart. We envision possibly an event center where you could have banquets and, weddings, corporate events, that sort of thing. We, of course, anticipate office. And we do expect some retail. I think our numbers had about 50,000 square feet of retail. And when I mean retail, that's, sort of service-oriented uses as well. Restaurants. This would be a great location for some sort of a fuel center use, that sort of thing. But, we don't envision that being the bulk of it, but really a mix of uses here. It was interesting. We had, there's an article today, I don't know if you saw it, about what Whitehall's doing with a mixed use development. And it's really a good example of kind of what we're trying to get to here, but ours is on kind of a smaller scale. But we do want to make sure we mix up the uses here, provide amenities, where people can go to eat for lunch. If you're staying there at the hotel, you can go grab a bite to eat, get some gas, that sort of thing.
Thank you, Mr. Underhill. So just continuing with this kind of summation of what's being proposed, as far as the developer commitments, so 4 acres of that, just go back here and make sure I've got it correct, of the 26.6, the proposed commitment is that would be set aside, to use kind of a generic phrase, for 7 years, with the intention of that being developed as commercial property, which we could all just refer to as office. Is that also correct?
That's correct. Now, that doesn't mean we don't think there could be more, but that's the commitment we're making.
Okay. And then, so the deed restriction, no more multifamily. Does that include senior living for the 40 years?
Yes, it would essentially be no residential on this, what's depicted as a commercial property here.
Okay. On the surface, it sounds good. I guess here's the concern that bubbles up for me is, the hotels are something that this community, I think it's just been one of those things that's been batted around for years that we would like to see it. I understand hospitality is under pressure right now. Hopefully that's beginning to turn. The question that remains unanswered for me is, what if those hotel uses kind of don't come to fruition? What else is eligible to be put in there? A couple of gas stations and some restaurants. I don't know that it moves the needle for me. I'm just wondering if there isn't maybe a way to tighten up this agreement, to steer it more towards, again, this phrase gets used a lot, but higher and better uses, or highest and best uses, that I think we're all kind of striving for. I don't have the answer sitting here right now. It's just kind of a thought cloud for me, but just some way to get more assurance that what has been proposed in the past and what's being kind of reaffirmed here will in fact, I guess, come to fruition, in the years ahead.
No, I appreciate that. We'll think through that. I think, we hate to sort of tie our own hands. I understand on the other hand that, you want to get the highest and best uses as you mentioned. I'll say that it's, I'm not going to take complete credit for this, but this some of these restrictions and the deed restriction concept kind of struck me like a bolt of lightning. I may have gotten up in the middle of the night to get a drink of water or something and it hit me, but because this is a highly unusual thing for a developer to do, and a property owner to do. Whether we could take it any further or not, I don't know. We'll put some thought into it, but I do want you to recognize this is unusual to begin with.
Understood. And then, Madam Chair, one more question, if I can.
Sure.
This one's in regards to the 4% interest rate. So I guess this is probably best directed back towards you, Mr. Underhill. What does your own in-house pro forma suggest is the payback period for that 1.4 million that's being requested?
It's about 10 to 11 years, depending on when we get started, and a lot has to do with when it hits the tax rolls in different part of the year, but about 10 to 11 years.
And then what's driving that 4%? I guess, how'd you guys come up with that number?
Well, interest rates continue to rise, and but we had originally proposed this and thought that was a fair number for, and it's probably a little low, frankly. But what we were trying to do was determine, what the cost of borrowing $1.4 million is for a public improvement, and kind of helping us with that cost of carry. So, we were looking around at what lenders were doing on, typically that type of a loan is a 20-year loan, and thought 4% was fair. It's probably on the low side.
So just to put a finer point on this, that 4% would be the developer's cost to obtain the loan?
That's right.
And so then I guess by way of the city paying you all back, but that in essence, it becomes the city's de facto cost of the loan, right?
On the 1.4, that is true. Now, there's another $2 million the developer is fronting and not getting anything back from, and they'll be borrowing, most of that as well. So it was a way for us to sort of, backstop a financing and get some ability to not erode the $1.4 million we're getting back over time.
Sure. Yeah, I understand where you guys are coming from. And again, I don't necessarily have the answer to this, but there are not many municipalities in the country at this moment that are borrowing at 4%, even if they're borrowing in a taxable basis as opposed to tax exempt. Certainly over an 11-year period. I mean, you're probably talking closer to 2 and maybe even sub 2. So I don't know how I feel about that, the city kind of taking on that rate of borrowing, when we can certainly do much better on our own. But like I said, I don't have the answer to it. It's just,
Hey, we'd love for you guys to get the loan.
Sure. I hear you. So for now, that's it for me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Jennifer? You're muted, Jennifer.
Nance, you're I'm muted. Thank you. To answer one of the points that Mr. Schnetzer brought up, tips are in place so that the developer can upfront the cost and be paid back over time. Developer is at risk. The city can certainly post a bond, borrow money. We've got a good bond rating. We could probably get a very attractive interest rate. Cities are not meant to take on a construction project like this because it'll have to be publicly bid. It will take monumentally longer to construct. There is that cost of doing business. Can we do better than 4%? I think that's something that we can work on, maybe, as we get there. I think maybe we cap it at 4%. Perhaps there's a way that we can do that, and we can talk to Mr. Underhill about that. As it relates to additional commercial office development on that site, I can tell you that I am in talks with 2 national brokers right now who are interested in that property for office and for light industrial. And so we're not talking about senior living. We're not talking about extra residential on either the north or the south side.
We are actually talking about office. That 270 loop is very, very attractive to a lot of people. The proximity to the airport. Now that this is on people's radar because it's hit the newspaper, and the fact that Gahanna is maybe starting to turn a corner of being open to development, we are definitely seeing some action. And I just wanted to make sure that the council knew that.
One other thing I might add, Jennifer, I appreciate that. If in taking some TIF money or having that available to us, we will have to pay prevailing wage on the project. I just want everybody to know that. So it was a good point about the bidding, because that's a timing element, but we'll still have to pay prevailing wage in order to be eligible for some sort of reimbursement.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Marissa.
Thank you. Okay, Jet, help me work through this, Ms. Six. I want to see this as a win-win, and I want to be able to feel that all the questions that I could receive, I can have an answer for. So I asked this question so that I can better understand, and so that I can be responsive to concerns that I know are out there from groups that I talk to. So one of the concerns that I hear about with the new community authority, it seems to me that it's passing along a tax burden from one entity, which is the developer, to another entity, which is a future owner. Can you help me understand how that, like, help me reframe that?
Sure. Actually, we're not transferring anything. Without the NCA, there's nothing. An NCA is, think of it like a homeowners association, and then on that front, I'm gonna throw it to Mr. Underhill, because that's really all it is. It's just an additional mechanism to generate revenue.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you know, what it is voluntary now. The person coming in and wanting to buy the property is going to see it when they get there. You know, we all have bought a house, I assume, some of us at least, and you get your title policy, right? And before, you're supposed to get what's called a title commitment ahead of getting the policy and before you close. None of us look at them. But in the commercial context, I, unfortunately for me, spend a good part of my day some days looking at these suckers. There will be a declaration of covenants that's in the public record, and so any purchaser will come to the property and to the closing table with the knowledge they'll be subject to that. So at least theoretically they could, and it's supposed to be disclosed in the purchase and sale agreement. Under Ohio law, if you don't disclose it, the contract can be terminated by the buyer. And so someone should at least be making the choice to take on that additional obligation if they're paying attention. Now, not everybody does, candidly, but that's how I would explain it. It is in many respects like paying an assessment to a condo or homeowners association. It's just on your tax bill rather than a separate bill.
Did Mr. Underhill, did they use this type of new community authority in New Albany to help fund the schools when that was first beginning to develop the new neighborhoods up there?
Yes, you're absolutely right. The high school was built using a new community authority charge that was actually at the time 9.75 mils, which is very high. And it also built Fodor Road up there, which actually serves the school campus. And I believe it's going to be retired here in a couple of years, but as I mentioned earlier, they didn't wait for that money to come in, but they were able to go to a bond issuer and get a bond issued based on what was a promised stream of revenue from new development, and that is in fact how that all happened in New Albany.
Okay, thank you. I thought I remembered that. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, I guess we have a lot of reading to do here. It's a nice presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you.
So in 3 weeks, you'll come back with the developers agreement and hoping to move it on into legislation, correct?
That's right. And given the timing, if anybody wants to pick up the phone and call me or meet with me, I would be more than happy to answer your questions because I'm sure you'll have some.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
This is Emmett Kelly. If I could just say one thing, if that's okay.
Okay, I don't know who you are, but
I'm with Frost Brown Council
Oh,
for the
okay,
city.
all right.
Great questions and very good presentation. And Aaron was spot on with everything he said. I just think it's important, Aaron, just on the NCA, maybe just to mention the control aspect with respect to the city appointing members to the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe, Emmett, and correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially per state law, the city would appoint the majority of the members to the board. And, in this case, given that we as the development team are not looking to really have any of the money available to us, we'd probably like a seat at the table to be on that board, but I don't necessarily know we need 3 or 4 members or anything on there. It's here again, this is completely a tool for the city. And frankly, if you said to us, this is something we really need to think about, I think we would take that out of the agreement today if it was causing us issues and continue to work on it with you if that's what you'd like. Until we sell a piece of property, we've got the control to be able to do this. But we intend for this to be a tool totally at the city's disposal.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Hey, Emmett, I didn't see you on there. Just want to say hi here. It's glad to have you on the call.
Councilman, how you doing?
Yeah, good. I have a question, I guess, and I don't know who to point it towards, if it's the administration, if it's the applicant, maybe council, mechanically speaking. So obviously we have some information to digest here. I assume we'll take this all offline, read through it. As we look to come back in 3 weeks, if there are any suggestions that any one of us may have for perhaps how to improve the agreement, how should that come up? Just, I know there's some concern about moving this forward expeditiously because of the impending construction season. Is email appropriate? Should we jot down notes and kind of wait to introduce it at the next committee discussion? Just kind of looking for guidance here on mechanically how to advance this.
Jenny, do you want to answer? I kind of know where I am with it because you and I've talked about this earlier, but go ahead. You had your hand up. I jumped in. You're muted.
I'm trying not to make noise and then I'm muted. I guess, Mayor, I will defer to you. My ideal would be one repository that takes everything together with a date certain. So if we could, for example, looking at the calendar, if we could have council's questions submitted by next Monday, the 29th, since there is no council meeting, by next Monday, March 29th, if we could have your questions, that would give us time to formulate and meet with both councils to respond and have either a drafted amendment prior to the 12th. I would prefer to have a date certain so that we're not at the last minute just nickel and diming all kinds of questions short. So if we could just encapsulate everything by a date certain, I think that would be helpful to move forward.
I was going to suggest much like we did with the budget. Okay. Perhaps that might be easier. That way a question doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Who's taking point on this and who should be included on that distribution?
Well, I think the question should go to Gen 6 with a CC to me. Okay. And that way if one of us if she misses it, I pick it up and vice versa.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Any other questions at this point? Okay, well, then we will thank you all for the presentations. I appreciate it.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Okay, next up, other discussions for City Council. The liquor permit request.
Hi, so you've got a liquor permit request for VFS Incorporated and Patio. Typically with these, what I do is I reach out to the chief to check and see if everything is kosher, and there seems to be a bit of a concern with this that I forwarded to you. So the question is whether or not you guys want to pass a resolution to object, or if you want to discuss this with Ray and the chief and allow it to stand. There's the question.
I didn't see the objection. I don't.
Where is this?
It was.
And we know why?
Yeah, there was an email that we received, I think, with the chief's comments.
Oh.
The concern was that one of the applicants has some prior issues, including underage sales to a minor. And he did, on the background form from the Department of Commerce, check that they would have that we would have a reason that the permit would not be issued. But you know, again, if we want to officially object, it has to be a resolution.
When was that email sent?
This afternoon.
Yeah, it looks like it came from April at 2:54 p.m. But it had, I think it looks like a forward from Chief Spence. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if maybe the chief's on the call, if he has any further comment on this at all.
I got it.
Thank you. So how this works administratively when we have a liquor permit, a transfer, new any type of new permit, a request comes from the Ohio Department of Commerce to the local law enforcement agency requesting a background check, basically to go through our records for both the applicant or applicants and also looking at the premise itself, if we have any extensive call history or anything like that. There are essentially two check boxes that say no, there's no reason that the agency has to deny the request, or there is a reason. And those are very simple answers. But in this case, one of the applicants had two liquor violations, I should say violations of liquor law with our agency. The first being an OVI, but the second one was a sale to a minor. So in the strict interpretation of what the commission is asking, does the law enforcement agency have reason to, deny the request? I think those two violations are something that we would say, yes, there is reason. Then the question becomes a broader question, and this is, for the city attorney and obviously beyond us. Can we prevail objecting to the liquor commission? I think it's safe to say that probably not. We would have to request a hearing, and based on at least the experience I've had in objections, and we've brought some to council in the past. Lounge 62 comes to mind, but I think there have been a few others isolated over the years where council did object. We had a wealth of information, call history, and violations like underage sales, after hours sales. That's not present here. We're just doing our due diligence to answer the Department of Commerce's questions as completely as possible. So I'll defer to Ray to that. I just wanted to explain why that was contained in the email and kind of the internal processes that we go through when the commission sends a request for a background to us.
What business is this?
This would be the alumni club.
I couldn't tell from
sure
the name.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're undergoing a name change or change. It looks like a change of ownership.
Okay. Well, there's been calls for service there, right? I mean, that has a record of that.
I would say that few. probably many years ago, it was more active, and I'm thinking probably back to the mid 2000s.
Okay.
You know, we would have more calls for service, but as of late, few and far between. And in terms of it being any one of our, you know, a problem establishment compared to some that we've had over the history of the city, the answer is no.
Okay. Okay, Ray, do you have a comment or?
Sure. You know, as the chief said, he's supposed to bring up what is in their background check. The 2005 OVI is going to be meaningless from the Liquor Commission's standpoint. 2012 is more on point because it was an underage sale. I would say that underage sale is probably almost every establishment has at least one in their time. I don't, from what I've seen with the Liquor Commission, again, like the chief said, I don't see how this would ever be upheld if we were to object to it. I think you need a much more significant history than this. So my advice would be this isn't worth it from just those two things. If there was something more, I might say it, but I don't see them upholding an objection if we were to object.
Well, it seems to me that the OVI was like 16 years ago, and it's not like a repeat. It's not like it's been an ongoing problem. And like you say, sales to a minor, that could, you know, almost probably anybody that's been open has done that once without knowing it due to a fake ID or something. They probably have unknowingly done that. So it doesn't seem like it's like a huge pattern of infractions. I don't know. Anybody else have opinions? Jeff, no. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He has his hand up. Chief Spence, do you have a?
Yeah, just one point of clarification. The offenses that were listed in our response to the commission, those are only local record. So, okay. You know, we don't have a broader picture of that applicant's history. I just want to make sure that you know, yes, the dates that Mr. Malarski provided are those local dates. We do not do a broader criminal history check of every agency that they may have interacted with or anything. Those are just local records.
So if he had like an OVI in 3 other cities, we wouldn't necessarily know that based on this report.
That is correct. Now the commission would, because they're doing a deeper dive on the applicant's history. We're only providing what the local record is.
Gotcha.
Just want to make sure that was clear.
I appreciate that. Michael, do you have who had a question? Michael?
Yeah. Does the commission have any sort of enforcement power here? And the basis for the question is one of the things you had said, Chief, is that, you know, perhaps this is a situation where they're undergoing a name change, which implies they already have a license. It's just more or less being transferred from, you know, one, you know, whatever, S Corp or LLC to another S Corp or LLC. I would think that if there was this, you know, history of excessive problems with it, that perhaps, assuming the commission has enforcement powers, that they would have rescinded it. Is that an accurate thought or assessment?
I would say the answer is possibly, not knowing. Not knowing exactly, you know, how many times this applicant this might be the first time that this individual associated with a liquor permit has had an application before the commission. So it's a little bit hard to tell. But what I would say is, and again, not necessarily my area of practice, but having been before the commission on a few times, they do their due diligence in making sure that those applicants, you know, are in fact one who they say they are, and they look at a complete history. So what the particulars are in this case, I'm not sure. Yes, it is a transfer, and it's probably likely a simple transfer from one LLC to another. So not having the complete facts, but I'm sure the commission does.
Thank you, Chief. So, Madam Chair, I guess the implied guidance that I'm interpreting here from Chief of Police and our city law director is that even if we so chose to deny this, probably wouldn't hold up. So I think it's a foregone conclusion, or I have no issue with I guess not objecting.
I would agree with that's probably the case. Anybody else? Karen?
If there should be another time, for instance, another time when in this same place there would be a underage, could we then have try to have the thing taken back? I mean, would one more, if for instance one more thing would happen, can we ask that the you know where I'm going on that?
Absolutely. Let me jump in real quick. I would just say if there is a problem permit holder, premise holder, and we have call history and it becomes a public safety issue, there are mechanisms for us to bring an objection forward through council. Obviously through the city attorney's office, because then there would be a hearing. And we've testified in those hearings, and we have prevailed in those hearings in the past. So what I can tell you is if any liquor establishment becomes a problem property, there are mechanisms to bring those forward, make sure that the permit holder has due process, has the ability to have a hearing. But we would certainly bring forward a substantive amount of evidence in terms of call history and incident reports to council before we would ask for an objection to a renewal.
Chief, I know that the time that we had a very bad thing happening, that was difficult in and of itself to do. So, I mean, obviously, this is not going to be something that we can do right now, and perhaps that would be a little unfair to the person considered 2005 and 2000. What was it? 12. Thank you. So I think we probably should move ahead.
Okay. So from what I'm seeing, we're not going to object to this, right? Okay.
Great.
We will not move that. Okay, thank you, Chief. And thank you, Ray, too. Okay, next we have Resolution 007-2021 for discussion.
Thank you. I think I'll just make a brief statement on this. Thank you for all the feedback that we got at the last committee meeting. Mr. Lyric and I sat down and reworked this to make sure that our commitment to engaging our differences constructively is recentered around that shared goal. I think that, I got some feedback from the National Institute for Civil Discourse, and a lot of the things that they're asking communities to do are the things that we are doing here. So if anything, it is recentering and affirming that Gahanna has really been on the right track, and that we're continuing to move forward with civil discourse in this new era, post-COVID.
Okay. Okay. Anybody have questions or comments?
Raising my hand.
Okay.
I do have some comments. I've gone through this thing several times, and I see so much of it which is probably not necessary, and there are a couple things that, if left in, I would find it difficult to have a yes vote on. And I had hoped that we could go through this specifically through every whereas. I know it's getting late. However, when we just talk about it, it does not, I like some of the changes from the last time. But if I could go through the things that I have problems with, I would appreciate it. Not that I believe that we don't have a civility in our city, because I do believe we do. For instance, the first whereas, members of the City Council of the City of Gahanna serve as the representative body for all residents of the city. I think that should probably read, members of the City of Gahanna City Council under oath serve as the representative body for all the residents of the city. It just makes better sense to me. So just leaving out some of that stuff. The next one, I actually think it probably isn't even needed at all. But if we do leave it in, we believe the important functions of society are to share and create knowledge, explore ideas, and welcome diverse opinions in an atmosphere of civility is enough. Leaving out the things after that, because that's what we're talking about, civility. This next whereas to me is fine. Declaration of Independence was fine. What's very wonderful is our Gahanna vision statement, which really says it all, along with the mission statement. Then we get to another whereas. Whereas we reiterate that our community is strong because of our steadfast commitment to strive to be inclusive, affirming of people and ideas that from all corners of society. I don't think that's all needed. I think whereas our community is strong because of our commitment to inclusive and affirming for people and ideas from all corners of the society is absolutely enough on that one. The next one I think should be just left out. And of course, the two that I find should not be in there at all are the last two whereases. Because quite honestly, I've looked at the Revive Civility Ohio. I've looked at the National Institute for Civil Discourse. I have great respect for the Supreme Court Justice Yvette McGree-Brown and Bob Cupp, but I don't believe it's necessary in this particular place. Oops, I think I'm losing myself here on hit something. That takes us down to the section 1. I think that should read that we stand united to encourage civility in discourse. And then the second one, I think it should read the members of the council or the City of Gahanna City Council do hereby encourage the community to promote civility and respect. And all the others should be left out. My ideas.
Okay.
Karen, would you mind sending that list to me?
I sure can do that, Marissa. I'll have to, write it out because I have it kind of all scribbled down here. Okay. But I would be very happy to bring it because I think that sometimes when you get too wordy, there's no reason for it. And this kind of says it all. In fact, our oath of office, and I think that's really something we should be putting on there, and I don't know why all my things here are. I don't know how to get rid of this here. I have something on my screen that I don't know how to get rid of.
I would just chime in with that. Those are similar to the ones that I had. I think, number one, it's just too wordy. There's too many whereases that nobody's going to read it. And if nobody reads it, what's the point? And her changes on the part after section 1 and 2 were exactly the ones that I had. So almost word for word. It's just, I'm a fan of brevity, and this is just, it's just too wordy for me. I think it goes over things too many times, so.
Okay.
What do you have? What do you, you're on mute.
I had hit something on laptop and I couldn't get it off, and then all of a sudden I hit something that sent me to the Cortana thing or whatever it is there. Sorry, those are just my feelings. I've really looked this over. I checked on some of the board members. I don't know if anybody else bothered to do that. The board members having to do with the National Institute for Civil Discourse, and the other one, Revive Civility Ohio. I just don't think it's necessary. And you know, if people don't agree with that, that's fine. I feel very strongly on this because I think it says everything it needs to say, that we want people to have civil discourse. That's all that's necessary. But I will send those to you, Marissa. Perhaps we could have lunch over lunch.
Thank you. I'm not vaccinated yet, but
when
I get vaccinated.
Maybe, okay. I'll probably, I guess I should say, you know, we have freedom of speech. And that's part of this, that a lot of these other things probably need to be taken off. So we embrace freedom rather than resist control. And some of this stuff is very controllable. It's not our job to judge. That's an elected official person saying. That would be a judge. In my faith that I share, it goes to a higher power, actually. So as we elect our judges, we don't appoint them. I'm not a judge of freedom, and I believe that freedom of speech is something that we must live with, but we certainly can ask people to embrace civility, including ourselves. So, but other than that, I don't think there's any reason to do much more than that.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Any other questions or comments? So this will be brought back in 3 weeks.
It needs to come back to committee.
Well, if you're going to change it, then it would have to have discussion, correct? If there are changes.
It's a resolution, so it doesn't have to.
Well, why don't we plan on it, and if we get a draft that everyone can agree on, but at that, you know, that would be, we could do it then in 2 weeks on the agenda.
Okay, maybe we can have it on the first week of April, and then if it needs to come back for further discussion, it can come back to committee for further discussion.
We could do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. In return to council chambers update. I don't have an update. Do we have? I guess we were going to discuss at the end of March. We were going to talk about it. Anybody have?
Yeah, Nancy, this is Mike. I saw this on the agenda, and the only thing that really comes to mind is, don't we have some construction going on at the moment or soon? And if so, I think a logical approach to this would be, before we kind of pledge to commit to any sort of date, that obviously A, those construction processes are completed, and B, all the bugs and kinks have been worked out, whatever the system is there. So I think once we have that kind of assurance, I'm all for getting back to in-person meetings, but I don't want to unnecessarily rush it, and we have AV issues that we haven't thoroughly worked out. Those are just my thoughts on it.
Mayor?
Yes, I was actually going to ask Kevin Schultz just to kind of give you an update, because I know we had updated the quote to purchase the AV equipment. Obviously, we have the transfer that was for appropriation. But Kevin, can you speak to a little bit timing in terms of what that looks like for getting the equipment from order to install, et cetera?
Yeah, so sorry, I got to make sure all my mutes are off. Good. So the vendor has indicated that it's anywhere from basically a 90 to 120 day process in order to procure the equipment and get it in hand once they've had a PO issued. I do think that we can do better than that. I do not want to, like Mr. Snetzer said, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. I'd rather, I'd rather come in, tell you guys it's going to be 90 days and come in at 75 days. But I do think, and I agree wholeheartedly, that we have to have a good testing session. We have to have all of our ducks in a row. We have to, we have to come out of the gate appropriately, as opposed to, when we were thrust into the original live stream piece because of COVID. I don't think that we should. I think we should learn from that lesson and not revisit that lesson. So I'm glad to hear that we should have those issues worked out. So basically, a 75-day schedule from a PO being issued is about the end of May, early June, so like June 6th-ish. I think that that's reasonable at this particular point. A 90-day schedule is about the middle of June. So I do think that that's what we're looking at. We did meet with the vendor in chambers with their engineers. Obviously, you go from quote to full design. They were up in the ceiling checking out where conduit is and how easy it's going to be to run cable. It's not a very lengthy installation process. The problem is the actual procurement of the devices themselves. You guys have heard of the chip shortages and all that stuff. We are putting in, obviously, a big bank of electronic equipment, and there are supply chain issues that are completely out of, obviously the city's control and then even the vendor's control. But I do think that 75 days is a reasonable schedule for us to shoot for, and in about, let's say, 30 more days, have a very good update as to whether or not we're going to need a couple more or even a couple less days in order to complete the process. So that would be my opinion. I do think that I will state that I do think that having this type of experience inside of chambers, meaning live streaming from chambers where all you guys are sitting in there, is not something that's going to be very conducive to a good, productive meeting. I think there's going to be issues and challenges with audio. Could even be issues and challenges with just general connectivity and a lot of feedback. And I think that would be very, very difficult for the IT folks to support in total if you guys were in chambers trying to do a live stream.
So should we say we'll discuss it again end of June, mid-June?
No, I would say we would discuss it again at the end of April.
Oh, the end of April. Okay, all right. Okay, so, all right. Mayor?
Yes, I don't want to switch you away from that conversation. If you're okay with moving away maybe from technology to the construction that Councilman Schnetzer alluded to. I know Grant Crawford had been working with a couple of companies. I'm assuming you're talking about the potential demo or the remodeling of the dais in chambers. So Grant can update you a little bit with on what he's found out in terms of quotes and next steps.
Yes, we reached out to the two firms that are listed on our quality-based selection process, M&A Engineering or Architects, and the other one's escaping me off the top of my head. So we met with them. We asked them to review council chambers, if they could provide us a quote for design, as well as a rough napkin quote for the actual construction for budgeting purposes. What we soon found out is it's a little more in depth. It's a little more complicated than just chomping it off and then put a top on it. So it came down to both firms basically providing us a quote of about $4,000 to do a conceptual design, a conceptual rendering. Once that is complete, then they would provide us a quote for the actual design of a dais project, dais lowering whatever you want to call it. So to actually get those numbers, we need to expend dollars to get there, and it's due to the market and the complexity of it. They don't want to waste money going into the research, designing it just to have it thrown away. So that's why they're asking for the $4,000 proposal, which makes sense.
Karen.
I think if we just got chairs that were a little higher, I mean, I know that it comes up and we can't be seen. I know nobody could ever see me. So if our chairs were, if we just had different chairs, that probably would be better than trying to bring it down. The reason that dais is typically higher is so that, you know, people can see who is up there and we can see who is out there. If everybody's on the same level, that wouldn't matter. I don't think that the monies are probably worth that, but if we can get some higher chairs or chairs that let us sit higher, it would be very helpful. Just a thought.
Well, I don't know. I kind of think we ought to. I think it's. I don't know. Do you think it's worth it to do that, to take it down? I think it's an impediment to the people seeing you. They can't see us. I mean, I've heard multiple people say it looked like we're just like headless people up there sitting at the dais. All they can see is kind of the top of the head. What does anybody else think? I don't. How much would you ballpark? Would you think like 10,000, 30,000?
I mean, it's incredibly hard to estimate, and I'm assuming that's why they didn't even want to provide us a napkin drawing or a napkin quote of it. It's hard to compare it to anything because it seems like every dais around is different. The construction market, the building market is booming right now, and prices for everything has skyrocketed. I hate to give you a guess that's going to end up being wrong, but I would assume design-wise, probably 25 grand range. Construction, 75 to 100. I don't even know where to shoot, and I could be way off high. I could be way off low. That's shooting from the hip as best I can.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, did you tell them that I'd be willing to take the chainsaw and do that?
That saved about 5 grand.
You go, girl.
I'm just kidding. Okay. All right. I guess, well, did anybody else have any opinions on it, or?
I will just say, just from a infrastructure standpoint, right? I mean, it's not just simply a countertop. I mean, there's wires and everything that run underneath it. I don't think that there'd be any impediment to, you know, the wires and such that we'd be running for the AV system. I don't necessarily think they're going to be in the way for this type of construction project, so I don't think there's a problem there. But you know, there's electric in the dais, there's networking cabling in the dais, there's all those monitors and such, which would become easier after the AV project. But it's not as simple as just, like Grant has indicated, you know, just you know, hacking it down and you know,
I know,
and making it an easy thing. It's easy to look at, but it's complicated when you look under the works. It's quite the piece of furniture.
Yeah, we found that out with taking out soffits. It seems like there's nothing behind them. Oh, just take out that soffit, and you forget there's plumbing and electrical and all kinds of stuff behind it. So yeah, I get it.
Well, I'd remind everybody that it's also you know, our court. So I mean, it doubles as court. So judges typically do sit on high. So it's got to function both ways for council and court. I'd like to see some drawings and have some input before anything's decided on the final design. But anyway,
Well, I don't think we're talking about lowering it itself. Just taking that desk, like the console in front of us, down, not lowering the actual where we sit, just lower, just taking the part that blocks our heads from the audience. Okay, so maybe we should just like postpone this discussion?
Yeah.
All right, okay, all right. No. Thank you. All right, that's our last object, so we will adjourn the meeting if there are no objections. Okay, good night, everyone.
See ya.